All I said was, hey,
Say it. Right.
when all these oppressed communities, when Latinos, when Black people, when Muslims, when Jews, when LGBTQ, when we all turn around and see whose boot is on our neck, we will realize it is the same boot. And the day we all realize that it's the same boot is the day we start winning.
The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
I want to get to make sure our guest today, we have some time. I want to make sure you have enough time with Steve Phillips, co-founder of Democracy in Color, and also his podcast. I know he does the show around that, but let me just open it up because I'm very excited to get things going. Folks, you're on the Friday Power Lunch. It's April 17th. We're so excited you're here. We're the hosts that bring you just information, amplifying the grassroots across Virginia, across the nation. We have rules of the road. Yes, we actually ask you in the chat, share. And I would love to know right now in the chat, folks, if you've been phone banking, what you've been doing for the Yes campaign, what are you going to do to get the visibility out? Thank you to the visibility brigades. But if you're nasty in the chat, we'll kick your butt out. And the most fun we have really is the after chat past 1 o'clock, because it's about the audience, about you asking questions, getting in there, and hopefully our guests will stick around for a little bit. But if not, we love to just share what's going on. If you're a patron, bless you. I love you. I've had 4 more that came in, and I'm going to recognize those in the chat in a little bit. I just so appreciate last time I whined, and we had new patrons sign up, so I really appreciate that. And a reminder to follow us on Substack. Great content. Fennell has just been doing pumping out some great content, so please subscribe to that. And today you're on the Counterattack Playbook. Facts, strategy, and narratives. And we have 2 great guests. We will have Gene Wu here. He's the delegate in Texas, District 137, to talk about what the Republicans in Texas have done that actually impacts Virginia. And it ties right to this referendum. But Gene won't be here till 12:30. But we have back in the pocket Steve Phillips. He's the New York Times bestselling author, the host of Democracy in Color. And he is also, of course, the bestselling books. That's what we're going to talk about today. You may have heard Brown is the New White and How We Win the Civil War, and his newest book, Are White Men Smarter Than Everybody Else? Well, damn, they sure act like it. So let's talk about that. All right. So I want to say that I'm going to hand it over to my good friend, Fennell Norton, and let her take it over.
Okay, thank you. You've already done a great introduction of Steve Phillips. I will tell you guys that Steve is also he writes for he's been on CNN, MSNBC, which is MSN now, C-SPAN, and NBC. And he does some writing for The Guardian, The Nation, and he also contributes to the New York Times. And I actually saw Steve for the first time on MSNBC. I was doing something in the kitchen and I heard this man talking about data and how Democrats can't do math, and it just caught my attention. And so we were so lucky. Robin says to me one day, I got you Steve Phillips. And so we've been so excited to have Steve as part of the family. And so we're going to talk about today his latest book, Are White Men Smarter Than Everybody Else? And I think it does follow very good with the narratives of the 2 books that you've already done. So Steve, let's get started. First of all, why did you decide to write this book now?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back. It's great to be with you guys and the work that you're doing, and just Virginia is so central to what's going on overall, and also particularly in terms of the timing of the calendar. Right after every election, after presidential election, people look to Virginia for like signs around where are we going. So you play that role. And then historically, as we've talked before, I mean, it's literally the capital of the Confederacy, where African Americans were brought in 1619. So and that's relevant to this point in terms of how I got to this book, that we have had an ongoing, unrelenting, existential battle over what is this country. Are we a multiracial democracy? Are we going to be a multiracial democracy and try to be a multiracial democracy? Or are we going to be a white nation? And that battle has raged really since 1619, particularly since the country was formally founded, or the very first immigration law, 1790 says to be a U.S. citizen, you had to be a free white person. And that the only time we have actually literally gone to war state against state, American against American, is over this question: can Black people be held in slavery? And so we have continually underappreciated the power of this existential fight and of white racial fear and resentment. And that's what the other two books have tried to get at, and I really tried to show in the previous book, that the Confederates have literally never stopped fighting the Civil War. That Lincoln was assassinated 5 days after the ostensible surrender at Appomattox, and assassinated by an unapologetic white supremacist Confederate. And they have continued that fight all the way up to the present day. And so it's really when you only understand what's happening in that context that you can really more appreciate this moment. Right, 1948, George Strom Thurmond running for president as a Dixiecrat, unapologetic segregationist platform, winning 4 states, which is lost to history. 20 years later, George Wallace running for president, segregation now, segregation forever, and winning 5 states. And so, and then without those core states, Donald Trump would never have won in 2016. And so it's important to understand how much of a cornerstone, how much this battle has gone on. So that's kind of what got me to writing this book. And originally, my original thinking was to look at what happened to the commitments for racial justice after George Floyd was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so my original thought was going to be that the working title was "Does All Mean All?" Right? The Declaration of Independence, all are created equal, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. We say that dedicated that proposition that all are created equal. And then I was trying to challenge those who had backtracked from the George Floyd commitments. And it's important to note that this was before the 2024 election and before the current administration came back into power. But then they did come, that the premise was that we ostensibly cared. And that, so it's like, well, what about what we said that we cared about? But then this administration came in, and there's been no more acknowledgement of or nods towards or embrace of this concept that all were created equal. And so we have seen this unrelenting, unapologetic, all-out assault on every measure designed to bring about equality within this country and to overcome the inequality within the country. And it's been so aggressive and forceful and intimidating to so many people that I thought we had to be able to figure out how to go back on the offensive and to really, frankly, respond with commensurate force and confidence and intensity to the attacks that are actually coming. And so all of these attacks on DEI and any other different remedies, and much of this started, frankly, in Virginia with Youngkin's attacks on CRT. And so all of these efforts that are designed to focus on and address the inequality within the country are coming under withering assault. And so I wanted to see what we can do to try to help us go back on the offensive. And so that's how we got to this book, and that's how we got to the title of this book. And so I'm trying to force people to say the quiet part out loud, because it is very notable to me that all of these attacks, and I've actually gone back and listened to like different, C-SPAN videos of people who are going after these measures. It's this comprehensive, deep attack on the remedy, but they're not saying anything about what is they are trying to remedy. And so what about the underlying inequality? And that's what I'm trying to say. So white men are 29% of the U.S. population, and yet they are significantly overrepresented in almost every position of power, influence, and authority in our society. And so that's what we're really trying to do, to try to utilize that reality also as a strategic and tactical way to go back on the offensive, because so much of the effort and the focus of racial justice and equality has been focused on the underrepresentation of people of color. And so that leads you almost unavoidably to a conclusion about what's wrong with people of color. And so why their families are broken, or don't have enough education, or don't have enough opportunities or whatnot. And so that's a deficit model. It's a very different inquiry because people of color are underrepresented, but at the same time, white men are overrepresented. And so then if we ask that question, why are white men overrepresented? It's a very different inquiry. And you get away from What's wrong with people of color? What can we do to help them? How do we move them forward? To know maybe there's actual active preference being shown and given to white men in this situation. And that is, I would argue, is in fact the case, and it can also help us go on the offensive. So we don't have to be defensively trying to explain or justify or whatnot in terms of DEI or affirmative action, et cetera. No, it's actually an important thing. Let's focus on the inequality. Let's focus. What do we think about this? Why does it
So, Steve,
exist? And what can we do about it? And so that's where I'm trying to shine a spotlight and ask this question and force this conversation.
So I'm glad that you said that. So there are two things that I want to go back to. I'll say, you introduced SWAMP, which is straight white American male preference. And that's where this argument comes in terms of this overrepresentation. But I also want to talk about the way that you think about forcing the conversation. I'm not sure if Miss Margaret Morrison is on today. She is a civil rights activist and she's, had a chance to walk with John Lewis. But whenever we're having any conversation on this podcast, when we ask Miss Margaret to close us out, she always brings us back to the uncomfortable conversation that at the end of the day, what ails us stems around race. And it's something that people are very uncomfortable talking about. So as you were writing this book and we're talking about forcing this conversation and getting on the offense, tell us, please, what you are thinking about how we actually get on the offense.
So two parts to that. So one, let me just say a little bit more about this concept of swamp. And
Mhm.
so um, first, just pointing out the inequality and the overrepresentation. As I was saying, white men are 29% of the population. They're 90% of the corporate CEOs. They're 90% of the entrepreneurs who get VC funding. In terms of the money managers in this country, 98% of all of the money in the country that is handled by money managers, handled by white male money managers, and they do not outperform. And obviously every president except for one has been a white man, most people in Congress, et cetera. And so I want to focus on that and then ask people, why is this the case? And so it could only be two answers. Either they are smarter, and that's why they're in that situation, or there is actually something systemic wrong going on. So as you can look at, what's going, shortcomings with people of color, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'm trying to lift up and what we're really moving forward is this concept of active preference. And so we're distilling that and boiling that down to what we're calling straight white American male preference, which
Mhm.
spells out swamp. And so we want to be able to then look at that. Is there active preference going on? So we're going to have a couple podcasts next week, and I talk in the book about implicit bias, all of the
Mhm.
research that is out there by very esteemed social scientists, looking at how the brain functions, how decisions get made, et cetera, that give the validation and the ammunition around the prevalence of active preference being shown to straight white American men. And so that's then gets to this question about how we actually use this to go on the offensive. So I'm actually calling for what I call swamp audits, which is a very
Mhm.
simple concept of looking at any organization, institution, system, and looking at taking 29% as the baseline. That would be representative in terms of the proportion of white men have positions, and how much overrepresentation is there of white men in that entity? How much overrepresentation is there in who's managing the money in different school districts, in terms of who has the top positions at universities, in terms of in corporate leadership? And then just asking the question and ask it in any either on social media and different people who are elected. I think you should be having hearings and just asking, why are white men overrepresented? And that's the piece about going on the offensive, is that we don't have to be defending this dimension of DEI or this part of affirmative action. Let's just concede all that for the moment. What do we think about the inequality and the overrepresentation? Why do we think that is the case? And that puts them on the defensive.
So it does put them on the defensive, but it brings me to the question of if I were to look at this administration right now and just what you've talked about historically, they do believe that white men are smarter. And that is the reason why we're where we are today. We have a president who thinks that he knows everything. We have a vice president the same. So is it really representation or is it power? And is it our inability, based on this whole manosphere thing and this white Christian nationalist thing, the ability to push it down with all of those headwinds?
Well, what's fascinating to me is that I think we all feel, and they have all these subtle signals instinctively that the top people at the top level of this administration do think that, but they don't say that. Even the people who are, have been so unapologetic about this have not been able to bring themselves to say it. And so that's what I'm talking about, is saying the quiet part out loud.
Mhm.
That's why this title is what it is. Because even this president, even this vice president won't say that publicly. They won't stand behind because they realize that's a bridge too far. And so that's where I feel like it helps us go on the offensive. Is that, are you really saying that white men are smarter? And if that is the case, then okay, that explains all of this inequality. That explains the overrepresentation. But if that is not the case, what are we doing about it then? And so that's where I feel like that's what I felt when he passed, when Trump signed that first executive order on the first day that he affirmative action. Because I had two thoughts. One was that, for one, it had lasted for 60 years. And so what are we doing now to come up with policies that'll last for another 60 years? And so that was like one of the thoughts that I had. But the other was that if we're being honest about it, affirmative action, as positive as it was, hadn't done the job. 60 years later, we still had and have profound inequality and profound racial and gender inequality in our society. And so therefore it was inadequate. And so what are we going to do and what are we going to create that's going to be more powerful and more effective to actually get it? So they have eliminated or certainly attacked or undermined all of the prior remedies. So part of me is like, well, let's just concede that. Okay, fine. What are we going to do now, though? And let's come up with new remedies and new programs that can last for another 60 years and can be more effective at actually getting us towards equality and justice.
So let me ask this question then. So we know, based on what we saw come out of this administration, based on what we saw with voting, based on what we see with this white Christian nationalism, based on the rampant racism, all that's happening, but we need a multicultural coalition to do that. And you talk about the fact that we already have one. So what should this multiracial coalition be doing to move ourselves forward in the direction that you are talking about?
Yes, and so that really is the essence of it. And so, like in a prior life, I was a lawyer, and one of my mentors, I see, Tony Tanky out in California, and he says that he could always know what to do in litigation by one simple trick, is he would look at what the opponent was doing, and he would do the opposite. And so that would be gleaning. So looking at the extent to which the apologists for inequality are trying to stop people from voting and trying to to create as much voter suppression as possible. That to the extent, even if it's still to me a question: are they going to try to even not even have the midterms? And so there's nothing I would not put past this administration. But that tells us that they understand the importance of voting. And they understand the centrality. And so this is how these books do tie together. The first book, Brown is the New White, I was trying to quantify that there is in fact a new American majority in this country. People of color and progressive whites are the majority of people. Historically, right, politics in the US was a contest between white people. That you had progressive whites battling with conservative whites, trying to win over the whites in the middle. And there just weren't enough people of color, let alone, obviously, we couldn't even vote for much of the time within this country. But with the passage of the Voting Rights Act in '65, and then most importantly, the ending of the whites only and whites first immigration laws that made this country unnaturally white. I mean, bear in mind that the world is 85% people of color. So a naturally flowing immigration system, you would have a fairly diverse country. So to get to a country that's 90% white, like we were in the 1950s, is unnatural and required specific exclusion. And this is back to you have to be a free white person to come with and to be a U.S. citizen. So when those laws came down in 65, then the U.S. rapidly diversified. We went from 12% people of color in 65 to 41% people of color now. And so now the progressive whites who had to previously try to win over the whites in the middle, if the progressive whites ally with people of color, that's the majority of people in this country. And so it is an important point. I want to emphasize it. People tend to, because I, obviously have been and am specific around lifting up these issues of race that people don't want to talk about. But let me just be very clear that there have always been white people who have been champions of this country being a multiracial democracy. And I mean, Thomas Jefferson, I mean, he obviously had other, problems, but he tried to put into the Declaration of Independence that condemnation of the slave trade. And so the Southern states made him actually take it out. And that even for however we want to be nuanced, whatever about Abraham Lincoln, he took the country to war to oppose the Confederates and the white supremacists. I mean, so that's a pretty significant commitment. And then there have always been progressive whites who have fought for this to be a multiracial democracy. Now, it's what I call a meaningful minority. It's always been a minority, but I call a meaningful minority. But now that sector of whites allied to people of color is the majority. So that's a long way of saying that what we need to do now is to manifest that majority and to be able to get all people of color and all progressive whites to vote. And when we do that, we actually have the majority. I actually ran the numbers in Texas, and you have Gene Wu coming on later. If every single person in Texas had voted in 2020, and then the racial composition and breakdown had been what it was shown by the exit polls, Joe Biden would have won that state. And so you see that, and then that is the story of what has happened in Virginia over the past 15, 20 years. That as the state has gotten diversified, and most importantly, as the electorate has become more reflective of the state through the work of the Coalition of People, New Virginia Majority, and all the different organizations that are part of that type of work, have made the state have made the electorate much more diverse, and have brought hundreds of thousands of people of color into the electorate and gotten them to vote. And that is why I think it's like 9 out of 11 of the last statewide elections back to like 2008 have been won by Democrats. And that is why Spanberger won in this last year. It's not because she had some, moderate magical message. It's because the multiracial new American majority showed up in force. And what people keep missing in terms of the Virginia outcome is like, well, Spanberger, she was like moderate. Your lieutenant governor is not moderate, and that you have the first Muslim lieutenant governor in the history of the United States of America, and that person is quite progressive. And so that person was also elected by this electorate. And so that's why I say the imperative of the hour, which what they are trying to stop us from doing, is to vote and to vote in massive numbers. And that's how we stop authoritarianism, and that's how we advance getting towards a multiracial democracy. And that's what happened in 2025 across the country, from the California redistricting to special elections in places like Texas, to New Jersey and Virginia and New York City mayor's race, which people do not give nearly enough attention to, showed that people turn out in large numbers. We win, and we can take back power, and we can redirect the priorities and policies of this country.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. I want to say, I know you're not able to stay for the after chat because you're doing your book tour. And I want to say to everyone, it will be in the chat where you can go to Amazon and get Steve's book. But I also want to say why it's important to get this book, because he doesn't just tell you what's wrong. He also tells us strategy, what we need to do, and he provides a lot of data. And so, Steve, the other thing that I just have to say is when you said Democrats can't do math, you do a lot of data. And I remember in the last campaign when Jen Kiggins won with Loria, you said, this isn't really an R+4. This is a D+2 if we focus on the right voters. And what you're saying is stop trying to placate to middle of the road Republicans and focus on the audiences that you need. So I've got 60 seconds. How do you want to close with that?
We need a crusade for democracy within this country. And part of what we can do is to push this conversation to go back on the offensive. The underlying inequality that compelled people in 2020 after George Floyd was murdered remains. And so all those who spoke up and said that they cared, we should be going back to them, asking them what's going on about the inequality, asking them if they think that this overrepresentation is because people are smarter. And if not, what are we going to do about it? And then we need to vote to massively turn out in voting and then push those elected officials to shine a spotlight on all the institutions and all the entities they're responsible for to see and ask the question, why is that overrepresentation exist in those entities? And what are we doing about that?
Thank you. This is Steve Phillips. Are white men smarter than everybody else? And Steve, you'll be back a fourth time because I didn't get to half of the stuff I wanted to get to. So I
Yes.
hope you'll be willing to come back. Catherine, did you want to
I
say
am,
anything?
yeah, I do. Of course, I want to suggest that this would be a great conversation on our Substack, a one-on-one, because Steve, with Gene Wu here, the delegate from Texas, you're absolutely right. I was listening to Gene, and we'll bring him up in a minute. He was talking about this coalition too, and the conservatives got all mad and they tried to protest at his house. He said, "We're the majority. If we would just all work together, this coalition, we will have power." Oh, that really triggered the white folks because then it was like they were like, that's what they actually posted about Gene Wu. And I think he's going to add to this conversation because it goes directly to the battle we're in and redistricting, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
100%. And that's
100%.
what's going to be fascinating about Texas is that, first of all, people don't realize that Texas is 60% people of color.
Yeah,
And 51% of the voters in Texas are people of color. And so there's a whole voter suppression piece there. And
yeah,
their whole redistricting thing that you guys are admirably trying to address in Virginia is premised on this belief that Latinos have switched over, they're now Republican.
right,
And so
right.
they're looking at 2024 numbers. Latinos voted for Beto, the Democrat, in 2022. Latinos voted for Biden in 2020 in Texas. And so this premise is faulty at best in terms of what they're trying to move forward. But yeah, this is a critical piece of the
And they're,
overall
yeah.
fighting back.
And they're scared of that piece of that ending equation of it. So thank you so much for being here, Steve Phillips, and make sure that his book is available for pre-purchase. And we'll hopefully, Steve, if you have that link, put that in the chat. And thank you, Fennell. That was so good. I agree with you. It was such a good, compelling conversation because that's where we're at. Reminds me of Reverend Barber, his whole thing. He's been fighting forever about that coalition of people. So great. So I'm so excited to bring up our next guest, and I've never met him before. And this is sort of like, as we call a cold interview in a way, but it's going to get warm. Gene Wu, Delegate Texas, and you're District 137. Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. How are you doing? I know you heard a little bit of Steve
Yep.
Phillips, right? So let's just get right into that. Like,
No, yeah, I mean, just listening to Steve, all I can do was just nod my head the entire time. I mean, it's, I mean, like you said, that it's basically what I said in that interview that I got that, the conservative media sphere spent 2 weeks trying to drag me for. And all I said was, hey,
say it. Right.
when all these oppressed communities, when Latinos, when Black people, when Muslims, when Jews, when LGBTQ, when we all turn around and see whose boot is on our neck, we will realize it is the same boot. And the day we all realize that it's the same boot is the day we start winning, right?
Yeah, and that triggered them. And did they actually mass protest outside your house? Did that come to
No, no, no.
realization? No, they were just,
They tried. Like, look, we had like two people in front of our district office. But this is one of those
okay.
things where this is what I'm telling Democrats. Like, look, they just found this thing and they're desperately looking for
Right.
anything they could turn into a controversy to divert attention from the war, from the tariffs, from the prices, from the cost of gas, to people losing jobs, to just everything, right?
Yes.
Epstein files.
Epstein
Um,
files, right.
and so they started on this. It's like a 2-year-old interview. And if you read the transcript of what I said, like, there's nothing controversial.
No.
I didn't even say white people. I said oppressors. I said people who are oppressing these communities, and all these people just raised their hand. You talking about me?
Yeah,
I'm
that
like,
was
I
the
didn't
best part
say
of it.
you, but if you want to
Yeah,
volunteer,
that
if
was
you
the
want to
best
raise your
part
hand,
from
go.
it. That was the best part. I listened to, and I saw them say what they said in their counter thing. They were like, well, they're talking about white people, like, oh, so you're the oppressor. They identified themselves for you. I thought
Yep.
that was so splendid, you know?
And I truly, honestly do
Yeah.
not mean white people, because
Yeah.
white people were not solely responsible for the oppression in this country. White people were not solely responsible for the Japanese incarceration. White people were not solely responsible for slavery, for Jim Crow, for all these things. There were other people involved. It was not, I mean, there were white people fighting on the other side against it, just like Steve
Absolutely.
talked about, right?
Yeah, it's
And
the
what
power structure. It's the literally that power. We call it, and Steve talks about this, and you do too. System, the system, this, and we see it today still alive and well,
Yep.
right? We're up against this fight. So let's get into that, because why we're here in Virginia right now
Yep.
is because of what you experience in Texas. And in the context of this conversation, we're talking about race, we're talking about power, we're talking about representation. And we're now in this blue state. You're in a red power, a state that is using its power, and we see what that looks like. Let's talk about where this fight started in Texas with this,
Right.
what the president said. If you want to start there, and then we'll talk about
Look,
Virginia.
I mean, the short timeline is, out of the blue, President Trump just says, "Boy, I wish I had 5 extra seats." And lo and behold, a couple of days later, Governor Abbott says,
Right.
"We're going to call a special session to redistrict." And everyone's like, "Why?" Right? Because redistricting is based on constitutional mandates of you redistrict after the census, because why else are you redistricting? Right? So there's no reason to do this. And it's generally, people have understood that the time to redistrict is after the census.
Right.
And there's no reason. Otherwise, you're just trying to cheat. And this is exactly what it was. This is Donald Trump realizing in 2025 that he is going to go under. This is a year ago,
Right.
right? This is almost a year ago, and already back then he knew he was in so much trouble in 2026. And they've been planning for it. They've been trying to cheat, trying to defraud the system ever since. And
Well, I think for a long time, if I could go all the way back to 2016, Russia,
Right.
do you hear me? Right. Like, and
Right.
I feel like out loud, it's so bold that this time, I mean, we saw 2020 with the call to Georgia, the pressure in each state. In this case, he started it out loud, just asking for votes like
Yep.
it was nothing. I mean, I think he's been conditioning people
Yeah.
to this normal behavior. But I think people need to know, even in living in Texas, and what that impact does to you when you're now under this map. And I
Right.
see from education to other services, what does it look like when you have this complete control and this
Yeah.
from women's health? What does it look like right now? I mean,
So
in Texas.
that's a great point, because look, you have to remember in 2020, Trump did the exact same thing after the election. He called Georgia and said, "Can you find me some more
Right.
votes? I need you to get me some more votes." And they said, rightfully, they said, "No, that's insane. That's
Right.
corrupt. It's stealing. It's cheating." Right? But to show you how much power he has consolidated in 4 years, right? Just 4 years later, he did the exact same thing. And Republican after Republican governor bent the knee, right? And which in any other time, they would have said, "No, that's unethical. It's corrupt. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. We can't do that." But 4 years was all it took. And what we have seen is Trump take more and more power. And so what does this look like on a practical level outside of the main thing? Texas voted down, uniformly rejected vouchers, school vouchers, right, in our state for over 75 years, almost a century. Like, because it's a coalition of urban people who want more money for their schools, rural communities that want more money in schools, and have no private schools at all.
Right.
And this vote was set on the floor. We were expecting it to go down, except that Donald Trump called that morning.
Oh my gosh, right.
And that's all it took. members who represent rural communities, whose own communities are 100% against vouchers because there are no private schools in their area. Because the money that will be taken away to pay private schools is from
Right.
them, right?
Yeah.
And those members voted for it because they were so afraid of Donald Trump and whatever apparatus he's part. And this is, I mean, you want to see authoritarianism. This is what authoritarianism looks like. It's not just attacks on other people. It's like you're being asked to hold to your oath. Hold to your oath that you swore multiple times, defend the nation, defend your community, and defend the Constitution. And all it took to fold them, to bend them, was one call, a group call on speakerphone from Donald Trump.
Yep. Well, the cult is real.
Yeah.
The billionaire power of that, like in Virginia right now, Peter Thiel is throwing all kind of money into this. And I want to wrap up this with Texas and Virginia, because now we have now have the referendum, as you know.
Yep.
We're glad to have Texas here. Before our vote on Tuesday, we started out the show, you didn't get to hear it. We are talking about all the phone banks we've been doing the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
And we do have a phone bank with Ben Wickler today. We have other people. We've been trying to really reach people to tell how important it is that we do this to counter what happened in Texas, so we can level the field. I mean, it's kind of, it is what we need to do. And I do want to end, and we know this part of it. We're glad that Texas is here. Maybe you guys can share this event, our event, so we can get some more phone bankers from out of state in. But I want to wrap up with you with this one question that the magic question, when Steve talks about this coalition, Texas talks about, like he said, if you all would vote, you're saying we're so divided. What do you think is going to bring that together? Where can we make that change? And what is your thought on that? And then we'll wrap.
I will bring one more step to what Steve said. And that is, I think where we should be united on is the one thing that we all have in common. We can disagree about abortion, we can disagree about guns, we can disagree about everything. The one thing we can all agree on is life is too hard in America. Is that we are working too hard for too little, and we cannot survive. And we deserve better. Americans deserve better than to live in a third world country. We deserve better than to work ourselves, to grind our bones to dust for nothing. We deserve better than to work 2 and 3 jobs to barely make rent, right?
Yes.
And I think all Americans, no matter if they're Democrats, Republicans, or nothing at all, we all agree that this is bullshit, right?
Yeah.
We cannot tolerate this anymore as Americans. And what I say is the way we unite is to say, we will not agree on abortion. We probably won't agree on guns. We probably won't agree on trans, on drag queens, on banning books, whatever else. Let us fight for the thing that is most important, survival. Yeah. Let us survive together. Let us go and fight for the working class again. When we passed civil rights, we did all these reforms under the coalition that labor and the working class and the middle class built.
Yes.
The way we restore America, the way we make America great again is by making Americans great again. That means reinvestment into our communities, reinvestment into hospitals, into schools, into roads.
Right.
Doing the things that help the middle class, pushing Americans back into the middle class.
Yes. Yeah, right. And I agree. And the president comes out and he says, we don't have anything for childcare. We have a pencil for you and one baby doll. This is where we're at. And it reminds me of just North Korea and Putin's world is that you will eat what I tell you. You will be enough for you. And that's not the American way. And we know that. So I think this is where we get the poor people's campaign mentality, if we can get that broad coalition together. And I totally agree with you. But I want to thank you for being here. I know we're going to wrap up. If you can stay past one a little bit, please do. If not, it's been my honor to meet you. And it's been a while. I mean, dealing with your staff, they're lovely. And it's been really great for Texas to come into Virginia. So thank you. Thank you, Jean Wu. Let's give it up for Jean. All right. And let's make sure.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
This vote is so important.
It is, and we're going to talk about that next as we wrap up the show. Carrie Short is going to bring into us. Carrie Short's outside in coastal Virginia.
I mean, it's feeling coastal today for sure. You guys can hear me okay?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
I feel so important. I'm doing an on-location shot with the Friday Power Lunch. So excited.
There you go. What are you working on? Are you flyering doors?
No, I'm not. I'm actually doing just a little community service thing today. No, it's not court mandated, I promise, but just doing some community service out here today, trying to spread my attention a little bit. It's not like we don't have anything going on, but I'm sort of in coach mode today. Are you with me?
Yes, let's do it.
I'm feeling coachy today, and I'm going to give everyone my top 10 things they can do this weekend. All right. I'm channeling a little old David Letterman here, but yeah, so I'm feeling kind of coachy. I've been channeling a lot of that, getting people active. So I'm very excited. We've had a very busy week down here working our butts off. So are you ready for my top 10?
Do you want to start with number 10?
Number 10. All right. Tell a friend to vote yes on Tuesday. Number 9. Right? Okay. Number 9. Get rid of your signs. All right. Take them and put them on the medians. That's what all the MAGA people do. Just put them out there. Get rid of them. And on Tuesday, drop your sign off, get it out of your yard. It's not doing us any good out there, and go put it at a polling station on Tuesday. All right. Number 8, spend 1 hour or more today, tomorrow, or Sunday doing those phone banks. Number 7, take any of the extra postcards. If you have any extra that you have that say vote yes, that didn't get mailed out, go and stick them on people's windshields at the grocery store. They make great flyers. All right.
I like
Number
that
6,
one.
stage your own visibility brigade. All right. You can do it. Do it in the dark, maybe with a little light. No one will recognize you. Put on a funny hat. Number 5, wear a sticker that says vote yes to your church on Sunday. Don't go to church. Just show up at the closest one. Aim for 9 o'clock. You'll probably get some free coffee. All right. Number 4, invite 4 friends to lunch on Saturday and then accidentally show up at a satellite polling location. All right. Oh, shoot. I thought this was the restaurant. All right. Number 3, use Demcast to craft some snarky social media posts and then tag all of your friends so that they see it. Number 2, this is one of my favorite. I'm obsessed right now. Swipe Blue. Use Swipe Blue, download it, and use it to identify all the Democratic voters in your contact list. Then send vote yes texts to all of them. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. I've got to send over 40 texts on Saturday, just sitting there, copy, paste. And number 1, the last one, tell a friend to vote yes on Tuesday.
I love it. I love it.
That should get it done.
Okay, coach, give me 10. Hit the ground. Let's go. Get some push-ups.
You got a lot of faith. I am in it's like Augusta out here. I'm in so much pine straw.
So Carrie, that is awesome. So Super Saturday is happening. So folks will be out on Saturday. I wanted to give a shout out to the folks in Isle of Wight because they're having a big Super Saturday event. So guys, go to Mobilize and look for it. They're going to have Nadarius Clark and others. Everybody is doing something. So do something.
And if you can't get motivated for this, right? If you can't get motivated for this, what the heck are you waiting for? I mean, this is crucial. We have got to get this done. We got to bring it home strong. All those, I just got another flyer, another deceitful flyer.
Another deceitful flyer. Yeah. They're doing everything they can to, and that will show you that they're trying to gain some kind of momentum out of this. And we need to do the counterattack playbook, friends.
Big time.
Yeah, I was going to tell you that Jess Craven did a really great post on Dimcast. And I posted it this morning on all the deceitful stuff. It's really quick. It's really easy. It's two minutes. And then she even talks about the phone bank and one of the folks that she talked to who will be voting yes. So it's a lot out there. We have every resource that you can imagine.
There's no excuse.
So quickly while you're here, Carrie, Robin, how many folks do we have for our hour?
We're 50%. So can we get more? Can we get more?
Just 1 hour. We're just asking you for 1 hour. Whatever it takes, just 1 hour.
Whatever it takes. I got it.
It's working. Vanell, say a couple more. The numbers are ticking up.
Okay. just one. This is for our democracy. We are trying to save
another one. There we go. For our democracy.
I love it. And let me say that we've been having so much fun on the phone banks because we always open with the fun video. And Lindley Thorne of Rural Ground Game is also keeping watch over the fields with the cows, because there's calves are being born. So as we see these little baby calves, it's so wonderful that we just are watching just life itself happen. And I think it's just so great to combine these two. But thank you, Carrie, out there in the field, bringing the top 10. We need to write those down. And I know we'll probably need to have that swipe blue link. If you have swipe blue on your phone, or if you're like me, sometimes I just go through all my contacts in my phone and I just start going like, okay, vote yes. Are you ready to vote yes? And that's just as easy as well. Especially if you
Yeah.
haven't downloaded the app, right?
Right. Or you don't have to use the app to send the text. You just use the app to identify your
Yeah,
friends
your
and then use
friends.
your texting app. But I'm telling you, I've been hearing from friends. I haven't really texted them in a while. It's just so fun. It's like hear from all my dumb friends all over the state of Virginia, and as an excuse to reach out. I've been having a blast.
Well, I'm going to say you can use it to identify the friends you want to get rid of. I think
True.
that's another thing. When you go like, are you kidding me? At this point, Fidel always says, if you are still on the side of MAGA, I'm not at your side anymore. It's time to sort of move on. And we need to wrap up and move on. And I want to thank a big thank you to our guest, Steve Phillips, author and political strategist, is here, and writer. So glad he was in the room. You need to get that book to find out, are white men smarter than everybody else? After watching Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, I think we have the answer to that, don't we? There's,
We do,
I mean,
we do,
super.
Catherine. We do. And Steve is still here, so I'm really hoping that he'll be able to stay for just a
A
few
few
minutes with
minutes.
the
So
after
let's
chat.
wrap up so we can, maybe he can hang on for a few minutes. So, and Jean Wu, new friend from Texas, thank you for being here. That is awesome. I want to say a special thank you to the new patrons, Lisa Russell Mina. Oh my God, Lisa Russell is fantastic. Kathleen Murray, Kent Diaz, and he's a new friend on Substack, and Anne Ulsham-Slider. That's a long last name, Anne. I just butchered that last name, but thank you to our newest, and Kim Wernick. Thank you for being our patrons. So that's Lisa, Kathleen, Kent, Anne, and Kim. You rock. It means a lot. We needed that boost, by the way. Thank you so much. And I want to make sure that you know about the phone banks. We're going to go over to the other side. Thank you to the Power Lunch team up there. Give them a big wave every week. We couldn't do it without the team, and we have a lot of fun together all week. So Carrie Short from Coastal Virginia, thank you for your report out, the top 10, and let's go and roll credits to the other side.